The information in the following article is tentative and reflects the state of the game development at the time of its publication. Some of the changes and new features may be removed entirely or implemented differently. Screenshots, specific values of certain characteristics, and details of in-game mechanics won't necessarily be relevant after the testing. And if they do document it, they'll probably not go back and update the article in submarine instructions. So, good luck. We've been working on addressing several issues in the interactions between aircraft carriers and surface ships highlighted by the community over the past few years. After extensive brainstorming and initial testing, we're now ready to roll out a concept that we presented earlier for the players to test and share their feedback with us. In December 2023, we shared a rough outline of our plans, that's a link to the devlog, and have been polishing it ever since. Now, after a series of closed tests and reviews of tester feedback, we can finally share what we've been working on, and we're looking forward to hearing your thoughts. The main issues we're aiming to tackle. Spotting. Aircraft carriers provide constant yet intermittent spotting that can greatly influence the flow of the battle for surface ships. Particularly if you're just a random-ass destroyer who's just poodling along and the planes just happen to fly over the top of you. Or, as I discovered yesterday, a submarine. As I played 12 battles that had carriers in it. AA defenses don't feel sufficiently powerful for surface ships, but it feels relatively strong for carriers. As a player who plays both, I can attest to the fact that that is true. Focus. Being targeted by an aircraft carrier can be extremely frustrating, especially if your AA doesn't feel impactful. Excuse me. Sorry, I just ate a really big bowl of dal. I'm kind of full. Full up to there. Our goal is to reduce spotting overall and to make it a conscious choice for the carrier that comes at a cost to the carrier. Even if that cost is simply time and risking planes, while removing unintentional spotting. Another goal is to make AA more impactful while ensuring that aircraft carriers remain viable in battles. That is going to be really tricky. We believe the changes outlined below will make the game more satisfying for both sides. And, I do have a vested interest in the carrier side of it as well, because I play carriers. In the current iteration, the changes don't affect hybrid ships. We're still considering our course of action regarding them, and we'll share more information as we proceed. Additionally, we're working on updating interactions with fighters and plan to expand on this in the future. However, we aren't ready to implement those changes in the current test. Yeah, no, exactly. There were, in the devlog, the original devlog, there were a couple of things that I was very concerned about. Mostly, I thought it was quite positive, but there were a couple of things that I was very concerned about. But I'll be totally honest, I can't remember what those things were. So we'll see if I remember what they were. Okay, so I guess let's watch this video. This might be slightly loud until I get to turn it down. Just a headphone warning.
Hello, I'm Shvercha, and I'm here with some exciting news about the aircraft carrier and
I'm sorry, did they put this audio through a washing machine?
Aircraft weaponry changes that we previously announced. We've done lots of testing and collected community feedback, and now we're finally ready.
What did they record this on? Wargaming's ability to fuck up audio never ceases to amaze me. I sent them some recordings once that I painstakingly EQ'd for hours for King of the Sea, and they ruined them. Because it sounded like this.
To share the results of all that work with you. Watch this video to learn more, but first, a small disclaimer. Our team is always working on further developing the game, so the information presented in this video is subject to change.
Okay, who else needs to know what that coordinate is? Chat, I'm giving you some homework. Go away, find out what 44, what does that say? 44 degrees, 49 minutes, is that 0 seconds north and 28 0 east? Go and find out what that is. Come back and let me know where that is.
Now that we're on the same page, let's get going. The main idea behind these improvements is to soften the overall impact of aircraft spotting and make AA defenses more effective, all while keeping aircraft carriers relevant in battle. Players can test the new mechanics on a dedicated server from July 29th through August 5th. First, let's get into the new carrier gameplay. Currently, carriers operate in one state that has the same rules for spotting, attacking, and etc. However, in this iteration, similarly to the concept we introduced initially, planes will operate at low and high altitudes, represented by 3 distinct modes: travel mode, attack mode, and recon mode. Travel mode is optimal for moving across the map, as it enables flight at high altitudes and maximum speed, out of reach of AA. You can't spot opponents while you're in the safety of travel mode, but you can still see enemies spotted by your teammates. When it comes to attack mode, you activate it by clicking the left mouse button as before, but there are several key differences. The attack doesn't start right away. The plane will first descend to a lower altitude before the actual attack begins. What's more, at lower altitudes, aircraft can be targeted by AA, but with reduced initial damage. Another thing to keep in mind is that the attack mode involves one attacking flight, while the rest of the squadron loiters in the safety of high altitudes. Aircraft destroyed in attack mode won't be replaced. Finally, there's a recon mode.
I'm getting really distracted by the background music because this is my kind of music. And so my brain's just like, damn it. So I'm really struggling to listen to the detail. It's Beograd. What is Beograd? Oh, it's the Serbia HQ. That makes sense.
Be replaced. Finally, there's a recon mode, which is for spotting enemies. You can activate it by pressing Q in travel mode. You'll make a brief descent to lower altitudes where you can perform reconnaissance, but with some risk, as you'll become vulnerable to AA fire. If you spot an enemy while in recon mode, you can start an attack directly if you want to. Just know that you won't be able to dive in and out of recon mode freely, as there are some limitations in place. Primarily, I'm talking about the countdown timer that runs down while in recon mode, and once it runs out, your aircraft will automatically ascend to travel mode. Additionally,
tell me that planes aren't upside down submarines without telling me that planes aren't upside down submarines. They wanted to avoid dolphining in reverse. That's really funny. Yeah, I know that he's from Serbia. I know he's the YouTube CM. I just didn't know that Beograd was the Serbian name for Belgrade.
activating recon mode will reserve a specific portion of time from the timer. If you return to travel mode prematurely by pressing Q again, or choose to attack, this time will be lost. However, if the timer simply runs out, the reserved time will become available to you again.
Okay, I didn't understand that at all. I'm going to have to experience that myself or read about it. So one of my concerns was definitely reading through like the StatsBloke a few months ago. One of my concerns was that they're going to make it horrendously complicated to understand how it works, coupled with the fact that they never document anything in a way that stays updated, just like I was trying to find instructions for the submarines yesterday, and it just doesn't exist. So my concern is that they'll make the spotting mechanics really complicated. They'll make from both points of view, from the point of view of the carrier understanding what's going on and the point of view of the surface ship what's going on, and it's not going to be described anywhere, especially in the game. That's my concern. Is that it's going to be a lot more of like, what the hell's going on? Why am I spotted? Why is this working this way? And it's not going to be described anywhere. That's my concern. And so when I hear things like blah blah blah, points, blah, time, blah, press the key too soon, blah, like when I hear all those things in a chain, and I'm looking at the UI and it's not really showing me what that is, I'm a little bit concerned.
There's even more news for carrier players. When you're not flying aircraft, you'll be able to manually control your carrier's secondary guns and activate the damage control party consumable yourself. If your carrier is equipped with mixed secondary armaments, you control the largest caliber guns. If a carrier...
That's really cool. There's going to be so many YOLOing carriers. That's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. I worry team will find one player gets it. Yeah, exactly. That's part of my concern, is that it's going to be difficult to find the information once a few weeks have passed, because there'll be like there was with the submarines, there'll probably be a comprehensive article that describes everything. Because there was for the submarines 2 years ago, there was a massive article, because I found it yesterday. There's a massive article for the submarines that is now completely out of date, and that's the only place it's written down. And it hasn't been updated. So my concern is that they'll release this with a news article, because Wargaming have a news article fetish, and they'll never go back and document it in a persistent way. And if they make subsequent balance changes, they won't change that article. And so anyone who goes back and actually manages to find it, it's not useful because it's out of date. And if they make videos, the same thing, because they would have to publish a new video. And so that all of that stuff combines to an increased skill slope, where the players who really understand the mechanics can get the most out of it, more so than they do at the moment. Because at the moment, I would argue that carriers in the hands of the middle of the bell curve type players don't have that much battle influence. And my concern is that that slope is going to get even steeper. And so if you have a mismatch in skill between the two carriers on the team, it's going to go back to what it used to be like in the RTS days, where one player just dominates and the other player is completely useless. Because at the moment, if that happens, it doesn't really matter so much. Because it's actually, at the moment, having like one really skillful carrier player and one really shit carrier player is not as bad as having one really skillful battleship player and one really crap battleship player. That creates more of a problem. So yeah, that's definitely one of my concerns.
Doesn't have secondary guns, it operates as before. Moving on to surface ship changes, which are designed to boost their anti-aircraft defenses. For starters, the priority sector is being renamed to Manual AA, and it's getting some improvements. Manual AA will cover the entire AA area around the ship, and deal burst damage to enemy planes within its range. But it will no longer increase AA damage in general. Now something to help ships that come under rather frustrating constant and focused plane attacks. Automatic AA. As your AA defenses fire, a progress bar will charge irreversibly. Once it reaches 100%, it will activate several damage and cooldown bonuses for several minutes. The last changes on our list apply to the defensive AA fire consumable, which provides a boost to AA range and damage. Now it has an additional cool feature. If enemy planes fly into the expanded AA range, they will completely lose their spotting capabilities. This only works if you activate defensive AA fire preemptively, and not in a reaction.
That was one of the things I was concerned about. That was one of the things that I remember going, ooh, I don't like that. Not the benefits of the consumable. I think that's pretty cool. It was the having to pop it preemptively part. Because that kind of makes me think of what it's like when a submarine pings you and you have to go, oh shit, I've got to like spin my camera around while I'm in the middle of torp brushing this whatever. I've got to spin my camera around and drop ASW on it before I lose the position. It feels like it might be a little bit like that, which on top of all the other shit we have to remember to do, that's just a bit too much.
The planes already being in your standard AA range. Also, keep in mind that the aircraft can still see you if other enemies do the spotting. And
yeah, they just said that was. But that's a completely separate thing.
One more additional bonus. This consumable also boosts the progress of automatic AA. If you want to know more, visit our website. Please like and subscribe and share your thoughts about these changes in...
No, that's not a thing anymore, TC. That's being removed. All right. So test details starts on Monday. You'll have to install a TST client. So make sure that if you've signed up, make sure that you do that and that you've allowed time for it. The ships for testing will be Midway, Audacious, and Hakuryu, Yamato, Kurfürst, and Montana, Shima, Z52, and Daring, and Worcester, and Zhao. You can still register if you've turned up to the stream recently. If you come to this article, there is a new button that you can sign up for. This is not the old article. This is the article from today. And you have a new opportunity to sign up if you want to. I've been through this already, but there's a prize draw for enterprises and musashis if you take part and meet the criteria. Okay, right. Let's read that in text so that we can actually absorb the information. Changes to aircraft carriers. The general flow of the battle for aircraft carriers has changed. Currently, carriers operate in one state that has the same rules for spotting, attacking, etc. However, in this iteration, similarly to the concept we introduced initially, planes will operate at either low or high altitudes. High altitude is represented by the travel mode, and you have 2 ways to operate at low altitude. Wargaming, why? There are two positions. There are 3 positions. Is it 2 or is it 3? You have 2 ways to operate at low altitude. Attack mode or the new recon mode. Each mode has specific features and limitations. There are 3 modes. There are 3 altitudes. High altitude, travel mode. Planes cannot spot opponents. Planes can see opponents spotted by allies. Planes can see opponents spotted by the carrier itself. I'm assuming they mean the hull. Planes can travel at maximum speed. They can't be targeted by anti-aircraft fire. They can take damage from fighters. That's interesting. Can they see the fighters? Or are you just going to get randomly aggroed? That's interesting. Can start attack mode or recon mode. Recon mode recharges. Okay, this is the bit I need to understand. There are power lines. And then in low altitude, you have attack mode and recon mode. So from the high altitude, you click to go into attack mode, just like a bit like you did at the moment. Planes can spot opponents. Planes travel at cruising speed, which I'm assuming by extrapolation means that would be slower. Planes can be targeted by both AA and fighters. Planes take reduced damage during the first seconds of descent. Once planes descend, the attack starts automatically. Does that mean you have to, like, click and then keep the reticle on the target? That's going to be really difficult. How is that going to work with it? Oh, does that mean... Okay, I accept this entire thing if it means that AP rockets finally get a sensible reticle. I accept everything if the German AAP rocket reticle gets fixed. Everything is forgiven. Recon mode, activated by pressing Q. It's going to be weird. That might get remapped. Can be activated in travel mode. Lasts a limited amount of time. Activating recon mode reserves a specific portion of time from the timer. Tell me they haven't used the concept of submarines and just turned it upside down. It's literally, they've just taken submarines and they've just gone, whoop. Does it sound familiar? You get a certain amount of dive time. You can use up the dive time. You can recharge the dive time. Sounds familiar to me. How much do you have to pay to unfix the reticle? What's ping upside down? Gnip. Yep. After initial activation, the timer continues to go down while you stay in recon mode like a submarine diving. Returns to travel mode once you run out of recon time, automatically surfaces after you run out of dive time, or press Q, go up to the surface. Same. If the timer simply runs out, the reserve time will become available again. The reserve time. You haven't mentioned reserve time yet. What does that mean? Activating recon. Oh no, you have activating recon mode reserves a specific portion of time from the timer. After initial activation, the timer continues to go down while you stay in recon mode. Returns to travel mode once you run out of recon time or press Q. If the timer simply runs out, the reserve time will become available again. What does that mean? That makes no sense. Because it's saying if I run out of time, I go back up to travel mode. But it's also saying that the reserve time becomes available again. What does that mean? So can I continue to... I don't understand what that means. If you return to... It's really badly explained. If you return to travel mode prematurely... What does that mean? If you return to travel mode prematurely or choose to attack, the reserve time will be lost. I do not understand what that means. No, I don't follow that at all. Planes can be targeted by both AA and fighters in recon mode. Okay, that's going to have to be a thing. I just have to see it because that makes no sense to me. This is my concern, Diego. Yeah, no, I do, Ben. I do. It's just those. It's not. I'm sure it's not the mechanic that's the problem. It's that this description is bad. It's just not explained very well. Travel, or maybe this will expand. Travel mode. In earlier announcements, we introduced the concept of travel mode to address the issue with spotting. Several key aspects define this state, so let's break them down. Travel mode involves flying at high altitude where your planes can't spot enemies, so they can see opponents spotted by your allies. Planes can be spotted, but this is really weird because it's gonna. If you think about what this does to the meta, it's gonna mean that carriers are now relying on surface ships for spotting. Just think about that for a second. Carrier players are going to be saying to the destroyers, for example, noob DD go spot. It's kind of interesting. I'm a little bit concerned about even more overload on destroyers, but we'll see how that works. Is that intentional? Yes, absolutely. It's ironic, I know, but it's kind of interesting. I quite like it. Yeah. I'm a little bit concerned about a bit too much being put onto destroyers again, but I like the idea. Planes can be spotted by other planes. Okay, so if you cross in travel mode with another carrier, you see them. I assume that applies to fighters as well, because you can be tagged by fighters in travel mode, I assume. But I think from what they said earlier, that's probably just a limitation of the fact they don't want to deal with fighters right now. And so the fighters just work universally vertically because they can't be asked to do that bit right now, I'm guessing. I just really hope you can see the fighters because flying blind into fighters is going to suck. No, I'm reading. The engine boost bar and engine cooling consumable will be removed. Fuck yes. No more. But no doubt they've introduced some new annoying sounds. There's definitely going to be some new annoying sounds. Because there's all sorts of bars that charge. So there's going to be all sorts of like, arrow, ding. Guarantee it. The engine boost bar and engine cooling consumable will be removed. Instead, planes will always move at maximum speed to help you reach targets quickly, minimizing the time needed to move around the map and allowing more active gameplay. Cool. What nerf did you work into? Yes. Additionally, you won't be able to be targetable by AA fire, but will take damage from fighters. I think that's just a limitation of the fact that they said earlier they're not doing fighters yet. In other words, this mode will enable you to travel across the map quickly and rather safely, However, you have to rely on spotting from your teammates to identify targets, which is really interesting. It's important to note that in previous iterations, defensive AA fire could reach planes at high altitude. This will no longer be the case. Based on the feedback from the close test, we decided to separate interactions for low and high altitude. So now, while in travel mode, your planes can only be attacked by hostile aircraft fighters. Initially, this also potentially opens, I just realized, this also potentially opens up the window for going a little bit back towards the RTS days and maybe having carrier player driven fighters. That would be freaking cool. That would be really cool. If you have one squadron that's actually attack aircraft that actually go after other aircraft, and you kind of like there's some kind of like cross the T kind of reticle thing that you have to. That could be cool. Initially, give catapult fighters. Well, I'm not seeing a change at the moment, Laffy. Although, I can see what you mean potentially. Yeah, as long as you can see them, because that's what I mean. It's gonna suck if there's a patrol fighter or a catapult fighter, and you can't see it because you can't see the ship underneath you. That's gonna suck because you'll just be flying along and you're just gonna suddenly all your planes die. That's gonna suck if that's the case. Initially, we also presented a new consumable, Active Reconnaissance, that was supposed to help aircraft carriers locate enemy ships while in the travel mode. But after testing, we abandoned the idea. Good, because that's really complicated and stupid. Active Reconnaissance didn't provide enough useful information for players yet. If we decided to make it any stronger, it would become a must before making an attack, and it's too complicated. Instead, aircraft carriers will have a different spotting tool. Recon mode. If you can see, that's a good point, Gourmet. Yeah, that is a good point. But that's true at the moment. Like, if you, at the moment, launching a plane is a two-way street. If you launch a spotter or a fighter and another player can see it, that's on you, you know? Like for the current implementation, aircraft carriers can initiate an attack by pressing the left mouse button. As the descent from high altitude starts, the aircraft can spot enemy ships and attacking flight will become targetable by AA. For the first few seconds, the planes take reduced damage from AA. The planes will travel at cruising speed and you can slow. That's going to make aiming difficult because if you're approaching a ship that you can already see in travel mode and then you slow down, it's going to throw off your lead. That's going to be difficult to do. The planes will turn. Oh, you can slow down this. You can slow down if necessary. What does that mean? I thought you were removing the engine boost thing. So are they not completely removing the engine boost braking thing? This preparation time is required to prevent carriers from simply starting an attack right above the ship and avoiding most of the AA. Planes will, however, not have reduced maneuverability during the attack preparation time compared to the current mechanic. Interesting. Which will make it a bit easier for the carrier to strike when there are no allies nearby to spot the target. That's very interesting. That's going to suck for destroyers. Potentially. Once the planes, I'm talking as a carrier player who's pretty good at hitting destroyers. Once the planes have descended, attack mode will start automatically. I really want to see what that looks like. Attack mode involves one attacking flight and the rest of the squadron remains at high altitudes outside the reach of AA. Each part of the squadron can receive damage separately. For example, the attacking flight will take AA while the rest of the airplanes can get damaged by enemy fighters. Any aircraft destroyed in the attack mode won't be replaced. This is the really important part that's going to be really cool for service ships. Any aircraft destroyed in the attack mode won't be replaced, meaning that shooting down planes actually stops the frigging attack. If you shoot down the planes, They don't get replaced by the other ones. That's the best part of this whole thing. Yeah. So yeah, but yes, it will nerf the Japanese. But when you make changes like this, every single ship will need rebalancing. Carriers especially will need rebalancing, but everything will need rebalancing. The whole game will need rebalancing. Because you can't make sweeping changes like this without that being a consequence. So yes, I agree with you. The Japanese carriers will probably need some buffs. Yep. Well, but the Russian ones, it's going to be like if you manage to shoot down all the planes, then that carrier player just launches some new ones. Which is kind of, I mean, it doesn't really change much for the Russians because that's how it works at the moment. I get to Grunty, by the way, thank you very much for the 12 months of Prime. The thing that I normally do to keep track of text when I'm reading on the stream is I highlight it, and you can't highlight in the in-game news, so I keep losing my place. Here we go. Any aircraft destroyed in the attack mode won't be replaced, meaning that shooting down planes will directly reduce the damage dealt by the attack. If the entire attacking flight is destroyed, the run is aborted and you switch to the part of the squadron in travel mode. There's another important thing to note. Every time you attack, the planes will regroup. So the attacking flight will consist of the planes with the most hit points left. More heavily damaged planes will stay at high altitude. Okay. In the current design, you can always press F during the attack to abandon it and return the whole squadron to the aircraft carrier. I hope that they maintain some kind of sense of when you do that, you can still take damage for a while. Because that's currently a risk decision you have to take if you return in the middle of AA. It's not to do with how many planes you shoot down, TC. It's to do with the order in which you shoot them down and whether they're whether they are replaced during the attack run. It's a reshuffling of how the planes are organized. It's not to do with deplaning. That should work the same in theory, because the number of planes you lose will be the same if nothing else changed. A load of other stuff is changing, but if nothing else changed, it's just to do with how the attacks actually work. Okay. Is that part of it? If you drop an entire flight, what do you mean by flight? You can't drop an entire flight because only... So, can you please clarify what you mean by flight? Do you mean all of the planes that you took off with? Or do you mean one of the subdivisions of all of the planes that you took off with? All the planes in the group took off. Okay, so it's not possible during one attack to lose an entire flight, because only the part of the flight that breaks off to do the attack can be lost to the AA, because everyone else is above the AA at high altitude. So it's not like now where you can lose the entire thing because they keep getting replaced in, and if you keep flying through the AA and you keep flying into flak, you will lose all your planes. That cannot happen. Because if you've got like 3, 3, and 3, only 3 of the planes attack. And if you lose those 3 planes, you just carry on flying with the 6 that are above and you're not attacking. So the days of oof, the entire flight's gone, that's not a thing. That makes sense. Unless you fly into fighters. Recon mode, which I don't really see the point of, but recon mode is a completely new spotting tool. It allows you to briefly descend from travel mode to spot opponents like planes currently can. You can activate it by pressing the Q button while in travel mode. You can skip the preparation and start the attack while in recon mode if you see a suitable target. However, keep in mind that during recon mode, your planes will be vulnerable to hostile AA fire, and the damage won't be reduced. Essentially, you trade the safety of the descent for an opportunity to spot right. Recon mode is tied to a timer. This is the bit they explained really badly above. Activating it reserves a specific amount from the timer. During the test, the full timer is 60 seconds, and each activation of recon mode will immediately reserve 30 seconds. I don't know what that means. As you fly in recon mode, the timer will go down, presumably the remaining 30 seconds. And when it reaches 0, your planes will automatically ascend back to travel mode. And the oh, I see what they mean. Okay. Yeah, okay, I understand. And the reserve time will become available to you. You can also press Q before the timer runs out to return to travel mode for safety. However, the reserve time will be lost. Okay. So in that situation, assuming there's no recharge, there is, but just say there isn't any recharge for a second. That means that you would get a maximum of 2 30-second recon flights. But if you don't use the whole 30 seconds, you lose it. And then there is regen. Okay, that makes sense. Right. So it works. Yeah, okay, I get it. It was explained much, much worse up above. All right. Manual control. We're happy to present a feature that was widely requested by carrier players. While not controlling aircraft, you'll be able to manually control the secondary guns of your carriers. This is going to be so freaking cool. This provides... I do get the impression, though, that this is a little bit of like, la la la, look over there, we've given you this really cool thing. Don't worry about this other stuff, because we've given you manual secondaries on your carriers. I can't help but think it's a little bit of distraction. It's a little bit of bait and switch. But it's cool. Well, not just Graf Zeppelin, Akio, because this is a complete rework of how carriers work, and this will give them the ability to add carriers that have a main gun focus, right? Because there were a lot of carriers that are based on non-carrier hulls, right? That were quite well armored. And so this gives Wargaming the ability to release new carriers that have an actual focus on pushing and shooting. That is kind of like basically hybrids with more of a carrier focus rather than hybrids with more of a gun focus. It kind of blurs the line between carrier, hybrid, battleship, cruiser. In the same way that cruisers and battle cruisers now have that blurring line. Smoke possible. So if you think about the current American carriers, the second line, imagine that. Imagine a situation where you're able to smoke yourself into a position and use your guns as main guns. That would be a cool line. This provides an additional layer of gameplay. For example, in cases when you must confront an enemy, it's going to be so good when you get charged by a destroyer. When you must confront an enemy that has got too close, or when you run out of planes during the late game. In the case of carriers with mixed secondary armaments, you'll be able to control the largest caliber guns. They will quite literally become the main caliber, while the smaller caliber guns will be considered your secondaries. While operating aircraft, all guns will be controlled by the AI as usual. If a carrier doesn't have any secondary guns, it will operate as it did before. While you manually control the guns, they will have greater range and precision than when controlled by the AI. The main battery guns on aircraft carriers will have comparable characteristics to those of destroyers of their tier, but with reduced accuracy. When controlling a carrier, you must manually use the damage control party consumable. Once you launch your planes, the consumable will become automatic again. Yeah, the Germans was the ones I was thinking of. Yeah. All right. Changes to surface ships. One of the issues we see in the game is that there are several AA options, but they don't feel powerful and often do the same thing. Moreover, if a ship's AA defenses are weak by default, using extra tools doesn't make much difference. That's why I always say about the percentage of a small number is a small number. They are only useful if the ship had strong AA weaponry to start with. We want to provide more tools for surface ships to protect themselves and their allies against carriers, so let's dive straight into it. Manual AA only affects planes at low altitude. That includes recon, right? Yeah. Only affects planes at low altitude, so attacking or recon. Covers the whole AA area around the ship, so there's no more sectoring, which is good, because I hate that mechanic. Used reactively, so you have to push a button. Deals percentage damage within AA proportional to the squadron's health. So the tankier your planes, the more they lose, which kind of makes the hit points pointless if you think about it. Updated defensive AA fire. Only affects planes at low altitude, so attacking recon. Used preemptively. This bit concerns me. Increases the ship's AA range to 7 kilometers. So does that mean you have to hit the button before the planes get to 7 kilometers? That's going to be interesting. Increases AA damage. If activated before the planes enter the extended AA range, yes, it does. Prevents them from spotting. But so if you press the button after they've entered the 7 kilometer range, do you still get the AA damage increase? You just don't get the D-spotting buff? Doesn't really explain that. Maybe it explains that. Is it just the blinding effect bin, or does just the blinding? Okay, that's pretty cool. Gives you a little extra bonus for being vigilant. Automatic AA only affects planes at low altitude, attacking or recon. Progress passively increases as your AA deals damage to planes. So this thing is the whole thing about a carrier can't go out and keep attacking. This is one of my concerns as well as a carrier player. The carrier can't go out and keep attacking the same ship, because if it does that, eventually this automatic AA thing will kick into gear and it will become very, very punishing to keep going after that ship. That really concerns me, because one of the roles of carriers, at the moment at least, is to go after and kill things which are running away. So I'm not sure about this. Progress passively increases, activates automatically, works for an extended period, increases AA damage, increases damage caused by manual AA. I guess it depends what all the percentages are. Depends how big of an effect that is. Fighters can attack planes both, yeah, so they're not changing that. We've improved several aspects of the priority sector. It won't just be a sector anymore. When activated, it will cover the whole area around the... So we've come full circle all the way back round to how it used to work. Like the current implementation, manual AA can be activated with the press of a button and takes effect within your AA range. It instantly deals a percentage of damage proportional to the squadron's health. So presumably there's also just constant DPS AA, because otherwise that means that like plain health is irrelevant. Because if it's all percentage based, it doesn't matter how many hit points you have. So there must still be, because they haven't mentioned just AA. So I'm assuming there's still AA, because they haven't mentioned that. That's automatic AA. No, I don't think it is. Oh, I guess so I'm reading automatic AA as being something that happens while your AA is firing, not the AA itself. But I guess that's covered by that first point. It's not very clearly explained. I guess I'll explain that. Instantly deals percentage damage. In other words, it should be used reactively to deal with burst damage in enemy planes. Manual AA will not increase AA damage. In previous iterations, we changed priority sector to active concealment. A completely new concept. One of its main features was the ability to prevent planes from spotting if they entered its range when activated. After gathering data and feedback, we chose to abandon this idea. Good. The mechanics felt too complicated and players had to interact with it constantly. After some consideration, we decided it would be better to move this effect to defensive fire. Yeah, that makes sense. We also help aircraft carriers. They will know that only ships with this specific consumable will be able to prevent them from spotting. And presumably the graphic for your defensive AA fire is active, i.e. the red traces and the cherry-centered flak bursts. Presumably that's still a thing. So you can see if it's active. We'll talk more about this in the defensive AA. Okay, author of article. Another issue has often been voiced by the community. It can feel extremely frustrating to be targeted by aircraft for a prolonged period. We want to disincentivize, I hate that word, we want to disincentivize aircraft carriers from relentlessly focusing on a single target. So we're adding another defensive tool for surface ships. While your AA is shooting at enemy aircraft, a special progress bar will passively charge up. Ba-ding! Mark my words. It will sound something like that. Ew. Guarantee it. I can't wait. I can't wait to find out what all the new noises are. Once your progress reaches 100%, a passive bonus will automatically activate. Ba-ding! Unless your AA is disabled. Hang on, I missed that end. So there's progress. The progress isn't time limited. So even if your AA weaponry isn't shooting at enemy aircraft for a certain period, the progress will stay the same and won't decay. Okay. So if I focus a particular ship at the beginning of the game, and then that happens to be the ship at the end of the match that, as the carrier, I need to go and kill, tough shit. Not sure I like that. Once your progress reaches 100%, a passive bonus will automatically activate. Unless your AA is disabled, the effect will last for several minutes and won't reset if you disable your AA. It provides the following effects. Bonus to AA damage. Bonus to damage caused by manual AA. Reduction in manual AA cooldown. I guess it depends exactly how that activates. Because if you aggro them enough at the beginning of the game for this to activate, I'm assuming then once it's run its course for several minutes, it then resets down to 0 again. And you start again. I hope it's obvious to the carrier player that this is happening. A bit like Def AA is active because you can see the red traces. I hope that there's a signal to the carrier player that this is happening. Because otherwise it's going to be a bit frustrating. In this iteration, several major changes have been applied to defensive AA. During the close testing, defensive AA could reach planes in travel mode, but we decided to remove this feature. Now it can only affect planes at low altitude, attacking recon. Once activated, defensive AA fire increases both the AA range and damage of your ship. Additionally, it will completely prevent planes from spotting if you use it preemptively, that should say. However, defensive AA fire should be used preemptively and not reactively, as the effect will only trigger on enemy planes if they enter the expanded AA range while the consumable is active. So if they're at 6.9 and you press the button, that's too late. Under the effect, it's interesting that defensive AA is 7 kilometers for all ships. Under the effect, planes won't be able to spot any ships or planes themselves, but they can still see ships spotted by allies, as well as shell traces and AA bubbles. So effectively, the ships disappear into a smokescreen. The effect ends only once you return to high altitude or go back to the carrier. Lastly, as you activate defensive AA fire, the automatic AA progress bar will rise to 50%. What? We capped it at 50% because we don't want players with defensive AA to always have access to automatic AA. This way, players can shorten the time frame without... Holy shit, that's really strong. So if you... Okay. That's really interesting. So currently, when you have an option between Hydro and defensive AA, 99% of the time, Hydro is the better option. Right? Everyone agree with that? What this means is that if you take Def AA, this kicks in half the time, basically. So you're filling your bar by 50%. So you're sort of simulating the carrier having aggroed you for a while, just by pressing your defensive AA. You don't. I'm assuming the carrier doesn't even have to be anywhere near you when you do that. They might need to make that a condition. So when you press the defensive AA consumable, no, I don't think they do need to be in separate slots. I think forcing players to make the choice between the two is a good thing. When you have 2 consumables in the same slot and one of them is the only choice, that is not a good thing. Just like if you have 2 tier 4 skills in the captains and one of them is the only choice to make, that is a bad thing. If it becomes a 50-50 choice, that's a good thing. It rises to 50%? Yes. The progress bar will rise to 50%. You gain 50%, as if the carrier had attacked you. No, yeah, it's capped at 50, but it means, I think you're missing my point. If you take Def AA on a ship that has a choice between Def AA and Hydro, it means that you can stop the carrier from aggroing you half as early, in like half the time. It's not going to be exactly like this, but let's say the carrier can make 4 attack runs on you before your automatic AA kicks in. Then maybe if you use your Def AA, it's then 2 attacks before they can't go near you again, because you're suddenly really strong. Yeah, but that's the same as it is now. It's interesting, because that's a problem at the moment. That asymmetry between the strength or the usefulness of Hydro and the strength and usefulness of Def AA is a massive problem at the moment. So that's really interesting. And then obviously Clarion, yeah, anything that can take Hydro and Def AA is therefore going to get a massive boost out of that, which is why I'm saying that when you make changes like all of these, the whole game needs rebalancing. Literally the whole game will need rebalancing. Because suddenly some ships are going to be much, much stronger. Some ships, which previously would have always taken Hydro, will now take Def AA, and they might die to Torps more, and so they might need a buff. Because there's always Torps, there's not always planes. To indicate it's been activated, defensive AA fire will have special visual effects. I really hope that this does as well. Because if you're the carrier and you don't know that the automatic AA has been filled and activated, that's going to suck. How many ships? 730-ish. The balance team are going to love this plan. I mean, it needs to be done because this will affect every single ship in the tiers where there are carriers. So every single ship from tier 3 upwards will be affected by these changes. Some for the better, some for the worse. And so this will change ship performance characteristics, in some cases quite considerably. So after this is implemented, if this is implemented, expect a massive round of balance changes. Let's say, I'm literally plucking a date out there. Let's say that this comes out in November. I think that's a reasonable time frame. They'd need to let it bed in, and they would need to monitor the stats. So I think you would then see a round of balancing changes the following spring. But that means that the time between November and spring could be a total nightmare, where some ships are really, really, really strong, and some ships are really, really, really crap. Do these notes drop today? Yes, I think so. Although, to be fair to Wargaming Bianx, the initial detail of this has been available since last year.